All right, Inuktitut in 25 minutes. There's not going to be any fancy PowerPoint things with this because I don't know how to do them. I just know how to print. So many of you have traveled extensively in the north, but I suspect that few of you have learned more than a few words of Inuktitut. So I'd be very surprised if there's more than 2 people in this room who speak Inuktitut, Noah and me. So in my brief 25 minutes, I'd like to take some of the mystery out of the language and also out of its writing system, but language first. Inuktitut is what the Eskimo language is called in a large part of Canada. It is part of the Eskimo language family. Now, most of you and most Canadians are familiar with the word Inuit. It is a word in the language that we call Inuktitut, and it means the people. In order to know what the word Inuktitut actually means, why it has come to mean the language that these people speak, we need to know that Inuit is a plural noun. And then we need to know what the singular is. So many of you will know that the singular form is Inuk, and it means, well, it means 2 things. It means, in general, a person, so any person. So each one of you, in a general sense, could describe yourself as an Inuk in conversation, not meaning that you're an Eskimo, if I may use that word, but meaning that you're a member of the human race. But it has a second meaning, a more specific meaning, and that is a person of the group known as Inuit. So now we're getting somewhere. We see the word Inuk forms the first part of the word Inuktitut. What about the last part, the T-I-T-U-T part? What does that mean? Well, in this language, words are formed by adding suffixes, or just think of them as endings, to root words. T-I-T-U-T, titut, is a plural suffix. The singular is T-U-T. So it's a plural suffix meaning like or in the manner of. So putting these 2 parts together, we get a meaning of like the people, or in the manner of the people. And since we're talking about language, it is implied in this context that this means speaking like the Inuit or speaking like the people. Some other groups of Inuit elsewhere describe their language using the singular form of titut, with just putting T-U-T on the end, which would mean speaking like an Inuk, speaking like a person. And the Labrador Inuit describe their language in this way, Inuktitut. So let's talk about this Eskimo language family for a minute. We start with the Escalution language family, which has 2 main branches. The Aleutian branch, spoken by the native inhabitants of the Aleutian Islands off Alaska, and the Eskimo branch. And the Eskimo branch then is divided into 2, again, very large branches. Yupik, which is spoken in Alaska, Canada, and Siberia, and Inupik, spoken in the rest of Alaska. Sorry, I should not have put Canada under Yupik. Yupik is spoken in Alaska and Siberia. Forget Canada. Inupik is spoken in the northern part of Alaska, Canada, and Greenland. And it's Inupik that we're interested in. It has many, many dialects. Inuktitut is not a dialect, but a group of dialects. It's what we describe, it's the word we describe, used to describe most of the dialects in eastern Nunavut. but not the copper mine area. That's Inuktitut. And outside of Nunavut, west of Nunavut, not the Mackenzie Delta, which is Inuktitut. Suitably confused by now? So you may have figured out why I'm using this word Eskimo. You've probably been told that we shouldn't use that word anymore, that it has derogatory connotations. However, we need to use it sometimes, and here's why. The Yupik speakers do not refer to themselves as Inuit, but rather as Yuit. So it is only Inukpik speakers who refer to themselves as Inuit, or some version of Inuit, except if you go to Greenland, where they call themselves a completely different word, Iqaluit. So the word Inuit works well in Canada with variations, but in Alaska, some of the people are Yuit, some are Inuit, and so the word Eskimo is in common usage to describe them both. And it's quite common for people in Alaska to describe themselves as Eskimo and to write about themselves as Eskimo. In Canada, the Inuit language is subdivided into a number of dialects. The word Inuktitut describes most of the dialects, as I've said, in Nunavut and in Nunavik, northern Quebec, where Noah is from. So, how does the language work? I'm going to teach you briefly how Inuktitut works. We can describe Inuktitut using most of the grammatical terms that you probably learned in school, nouns and verbs, adjectives and adverbs, and so on. Here's one peculiarity, though. Inuktitut has singular and plural, just like English, but it also has a dual form, a special set of endings to go on the ends of nouns and verbs to describe two things, or actions done by two people. So we'll illustrate that using the example of Inuk, since that's a word that by now I hope you know. So Inuk means one person, Inuk means two people, and Inuit, the plural, means three or more people. And vowel length is significant in Inuktitut. By significant, I mean the difference between a long vowel and a short vowel can change the meaning of an utterance. And a long vowel, forget what you learned in English, that, you know, the A in bat is a short A and the A in bait is a long A. Forget all that. The only thing that matters is how long you hold the sound. So the U in Inuk is short, Inuk. The U in Inuk is long. Here's how it works with a verb. Same way. Pishuk is a stem, meaning walking. And if you say pishuk all on its own, it doesn't mean anything. It's got to have an ending on it to contextualize it. So pishuk tok, he is walking. Pishuk tuk, they are walking, but two people, not plural. Pishuk tut, they are walking, three or more people. So putting a noun and a verb together, you could say that if that guy in the top picture, his name is David, which in Inuktitut would be Davidi, we could say Davidi pishoktok. If that's Davidi and his friend Paulusi, which is Inuktitut for Paul, in the second picture, we could say Davidi Paulusilu pishoktuk. And those three guys in the bottom, let's just call them Inuit. Inuit Pishuktut. So there, your first more than one word sentences in Inuktitut. I'm going to teach you how to ask and answer a very simple question. Here's the vocabulary you're going to need for it. Kina means who. Then the particle or the chunk or the piece u makes it a verb if you put an ending on it. And the ending we're going to put on it is you singular in a question. So putting those three things together, Inuktitut, who are you? In other words, what's your name? And the answer is pretty easy if you know your name. It is Mary, if your name is Mary. Mary u Yunga, I am Mary. Sami u Yunga, I am Sami. David u Yunga, I am David. Unless your name ends with two vowels. Because, look at Maria on the bottom, I-A, if you put the U after it, you'd have three vowels, and Inuktitut abhors a three-vowel sequence. So you would have to split it up with something, and in Canadian Inuktitut, that's the symbol NG, which I write as one funny symbol there, because it's really one sound. So, Maria Ngoyunga. So that's how you answer the question, Inuktitut. Now, you don't have microphones, but I'm going to try this on a few of you. Inuktitut. Loud voice. Pretty close. I would have said Giorgio Yunga. Inuktitut. Yep. And Inuktitut. Everybody's trying not to look at me. So I'm going to come to you. Inuktitut. Mary Uyunga. That's easy because yours is on the board. Inuktitut. John, and I would say, I would do what Inuit do and put an I on the end of it. John Uyunga. Because it just flows a little better. Okay, a few more. Inuktitut. Oh, do it anyway. David Uyunga. Okay, good. One more. Inuktitut. Janet Nguyunga. Yeah. Janet, or you could say Janet Uyunga. Yeah. It's just lots of ways of doing it if your name is not an Inuit name. And I'm going to digress here a minute, what George was afraid I might do. Inuit are great at giving people descriptive names as well. It doesn't matter what their name is. My first name happens to be Kenn, but I've lived in the Arctic for 46 years, and there's lots of elders there who, when I went there, most of the adults were monolingual Inuktitut speakers. They didn't speak English at all. So some of them never had occasion to find out what my name was in English, so they gave me a name. And you can find elders in Qikiqtarjuaq or Pangnirtung who, if you ask them, who's Kenn Harper? They don't have a clue. But if you ask them, who is Iliseiqutak? Oh, that guy, yeah. Because my Inuktitut name is Iliseiqutak, which means the tall teacher, because I went north as a teacher. Umilik is a common name for anybody with a beard, so a number of you have probably been identified, whether you know it or not, as Umilik. A particularly funny one that I heard some years back was a tourist who was north on a hunting expedition, and he was completely bald except for a little tuft of hair in the middle. So the Inuit immediately named him Qikiqtalik, the one with an island. So you already know more Inuktitut than you realize, because you know some common words, I should hope, and most of them are nouns. You know Inuk, you know Inuit, you know Igloo, you probably know Inukshuk. Most of you almost certainly know kayak. These are all Inuit words that have been borrowed, as all languages borrow from each other, borrowed into English. But there are lots of others. Anybody want to volunteer a few? Say it again. Ulu. the knife. I heard somebody say ukpik, the snowy owl. What? Kamutik, the sled. So you know lots of Inuit words. The satellite, the Anik satellite, that's an Inuit word. It means the brother of a girl, a girl's brother. You probably know the word Nuna, the root of Nunavut. Nunavut, our land. So Nuna is land. Some of you probably know that the word anorak to describe pullover comes from the Inuit word anorak, clothing, or in some dialects a particular type of clothing. You might know the word for the part of the whale skin that is a delicacy, maktak. There are probably lots more if we had time. But I want to show you how the language Inuktitut builds up a word. You've probably heard the old saying, well, in Inuktitut, a whole sentence can be one word. Well, that's true, but it helps to know what we mean by word. And by word, we mean an utterance. And words are built up by having a root word and adding to it, and adding to it, and adding to it. So, we'll start with a word that you know. What's it mean again? House. Yes, house or dwelling, but we'll call it a house. So, that's simply a word. You could use it on its own. It doesn't have to be completed by a suffix. If somebody pointed to something and said, what's that? You could say, igloo. And that has meaning. Let's add something to it. And I'm using colors just to show the parts of the word. So we've added two things to it. We've added a suffix, or an infix, as some people might want to call it, since it's not on the end. The part in red, leok. Leok, when added to a noun, means to build or to make. So if I walked up to an Inuk and said, leok, it means nothing. It only acquires meaning by being added to something. That's why it's a suffix or an infix, not a word. And then it has to be completed by something that shows who's doing the action. Building a house, sure, that's a nice idea, but igloo leok doesn't mean anything until it's completed. So I've put the ending for first person singular indicative, if you want to think of it in a sort of an English terminology. So, igloo leok tunga. I am building a house. If it wasn't me, if it was George here, and I was speaking to George, I would say, igloo leok tutit. You are building a house. Or if I was telling George that Linda is building a house, first that would come as news to him, but I would say, igloo leok tok. She is building a house, or he is building a house. And I could go on. I could do we, remember, two people. We, dual, are building a house. You, two people, are building a house. They, two people, are building a house. And then so on with the plural. Let's make it easy. Let's stick to first person singular. Igloo leok tunga. I am building a house. Here and now, present time. Well, that's too easy. So let's add another level of complexity. Igloo leoroma yunga. And before I explain what it means, I've added some stuff over there on the right, because when you add endings, it either keeps the letter that the previous chunk ended with or deletes it. So igloo leok ends with a consonant, and the consonant is followed by tunga, And there's no deletion there yet. You'll see that in a future example. But Iqaluit Roma Junge, Roma ends in a vowel. So you don't say Iqaluit Roma Tunga. That's awkward. Nobody would say that. You say Iqaluit Roma Junge. So it's either Tunga or Junge. So what's the R-U-M-A, the Roma? And that's a R that's way back in your throat, a uvular sound. It means want. So now we have the meaning, I want to build a house. I'm not building it yet. I want to build a house. And again, it could be you want to build a house, he wants to build a house, and so on. Let's make it a little more complex. We've stuck in niak in there, and because niak ends in a Q, we're back to, like in the second example, Iqaluit, it's Iqaluit Roma niak tunga. Because Q is a consonant, so it's followed by tunga. Okay, so what does that niak add to it? It adds the idea of futureness. So I don't want to build a house right now, but I will want to build a house. When would you say anything like that? Well, if my mortgage application is approved, I will want to build a house. If my parents give me $100,000, I will want to build a house. So, Iqaluit Roma niak tunga. So we've taken iglu and we've added 1, 2, 3, 4 suffixes on the end of it to convey a meaning. Okay, so that's the future example. There's the same example, but I've made it past tense. Iqaluit Roma lauk tunga. I wanted to build a house. It's simply past tense. I wanted to build a house. Iqaluit Roma lauk tunga. I can make it a little longer. I can put future and past together. I can take the niak and I can add lauk to it. But you notice that lauk after niak, after a vowel, deletes the vowel. So the Q on niak has now disappeared because lauk is deletive of the previous chunk. So you have Iqaluit Roma niak lauk tunga. Now, what am I talking about? Putting future and past together. Easy. I would have wanted to build a house. I would have wanted to build a house if my mortgage application had been approved. I can make it a little longer yet. I've stuck in this kind of ubiquitous Inuktitut chunk called, which is Iqaluit, near the end. That can have so many different meanings, but often it implies it's adding a condition. I would have wanted to build a house, but didn't get my mortgage. My mother didn't leave me $100,000. So when you see Iqaluit, it often has the meaning of but for some extenuating circumstance. Yeah. Because, how come all the words are together? Because they're not words. They're parts of a word. And you need that whole thing to be a word. Like, I can't walk up to you and say, Iqaluit. It doesn't mean anything. I can't walk up to you and say, Roma. It doesn't mean anything. The only thing there that means anything by itself is igloo. If you say that by itself, people will know that that means a house. Now, George is going to tell me in a minute that I'm out of time, or a minute ago he should have. There's how you write the last one there. Now, what on earth does all this stuff mean? If you've traveled in the north, you've seen syllabics on signs and in books and in the airplane and so forth, both in Inuktitut and in Northern First Nations languages, that it shows that syllabics on a simple level can show a vowel or a consonant plus a vowel. If you put a dot above a symbol, if you use the far right hand, you get a vowel plus a consonant, or a consonant, vowel, consonant. Then if you put a dot above a symbol, you can make any one of those vowels long. So what we've got there, I'll just rhyme off a few of them. I-u-ah, pi-pu-pa, ti-tu-ta, ki-ku-ka, gi-gu-ga, mi-mu-ma, ni-nu-na, and so forth. So I've written some words on the right-hand side. The first one is two symbols. So just go down to ni, nu, na. There's nu, and there's na. That's that one, and that's that one. So that's the word for land, nuna. Okay, so there it is again with something else on the end, this vut. And to find that, you go down to the vi, vu, va. There's vu, right there. And then you need a final consonant, t, and you'll find that here, ti, tu, ta. That's the little ta. There's e from i-u-ah, nu from ni-nu-na, i-nu, with a little k on the end, inuk. And there's a from i-u-ah, na from ni-nu-na, the dot on it, making it na, a long a, and another na, anana, the word for mother. So if I bump into any of you at coffee, there'll be a quiz, and I want to know how much of this you've remembered, and that's your Inuktitut lesson in 25 minutes.